Hello team, welcome to my session on Coffee with Prab, and today we're going to discuss about one of the unique use case. It's not a use case, but it is a challenge which is faced by every aspiring CISO. Okay, and even when I did my first project, and this was the challenge what I faced. So I thought I will translate the problem into the solutions and what I did when I handled my first project end to end the security. So I thought I will make a video on that. In this video, we're going to discuss about how CISO will interpret any legal requirement, regulatory requirement, and how he convert that into the actionable plan. How do you need to speak, what to whom you need to speak, what are the kind of interaction, what kind of a questions, how to start anything of information security with mapping of business legal requirement, how you align your requirement with the organization strategies, what should be the how to read P&L report, profit and loss reports, how to read the regulatory requirement, and more important, how to extract the security requirement from a regulatory requirement, legal requirement, business requirement. That's something we're going to cover in this video. I can bet on this. I really put a lot of work on this particular video, and I'm sure this will going to solve one of the first problem which you ever face when you start a cybersecurity services in your organization. And I can bet on this. It is a first kind of video on YouTube who made someone like this mapping of business requirement and end-to-end security solution services for the customer. So if you're new to the channel, do subscribe to the YouTube channel and click on the bell icon to make sure you should not miss my future videos on a similar topic. My name is Prab Nair. For more information, you can check my LinkedIn profile. So without wasting a time, let's start with the first part. Okay, so let's get started. So when you're working as a CISO or when you're working as a virtual consultant for any organization, you cannot simply go and start implementing policies and all that. So you need to understand one thing here is you need to set a mental order. Might be your previous experience was technical and might be your first project where you need to build policy, strategy and all that. So you have to change your thought process. And that is the reason if you talk about any company and all that, you need to first understand the business. Because I will tell you one thing, different company, different business demand different type of information security. Let's take an example, when you work for the e-commerce projects, so their priority is availability. When you work for the defense or you work for any defense products and all that, their priority is different. When you work for the fintech and all that, their priority is different. So it is very important. You cannot simply, okay, you had a good amount of experience in the product industry and you are now moving to the service industry and you simply creating a same replica. You cannot use the same template for other companies, right? So you need to first understand the business. If you don't know how the firm basically earns, generate a revenue, or how they basically doing spending or they grow, every control field record random. It's very important. So you should know business first. Second is in which region they operate. Because let's take example, if you're doing a business in India, in a banking sector, you need to be comply with RBI. If you're doing a business in India, in an insurance sector, you need to be comply with IRDA. So second important thing, you need to understand the land where you operate. Two things you need to understand. If your company in India doing a business in USA, so you need to know the law of USA. Your company is in India and doing a business in Europe, you need to understand a GDPR. And if you're doing a business in India itself, you need to know the law of the land. So company was registered in India and doing a business in other countries. So you need to understand both. So it's very important. You need to know legal because you can map only the law and regulation that can fine, jail or block the market access. Third is basically the security. Definitely you need to design control that protect value, and also you need to prove compliance. So you need to first set this mental order, understand the business, how they generate a revenue, what they do, what they actually do in the market, how they're getting a revenue, what are the services generating a revenue. Then understand the law of the land where they operate, understand the regulations, legal aspects and all that, because then only you can able to create a value. And finally, we design the control as based on a business and legal regulatory requirement. So law is the top authority of any country. Okay, always remember, law is the top authority of any country, and they introduce regulations to control a specific industry. Let's take example in India. If they want to control the banking sector, for that they have a dedicated regulation which is called RBI. If they want to control the insurance sector, they need to comply with IRDA. If you're doing a business in food industry and all that, you need to be comply with FSSAI. And if you're doing a business in other sector, so let's say example, I'm doing a business in bank, so I have to be comply with RBI. So regulation was introduced to control a specific industry in India. Same we have in US. If you're going public limited, you need to be comply with SEC, Security Exchange Commissions. So you need to understand the regulation and also need to understand the law which support the regulations. But I'm not telling you need to be expert on that area, because in every company we have a legal attorney with whom you can understand the requirement. So let's move with the first thing what you have to do in the company. So as I said earlier, before jumping into any action, my suggestion is that at least first 2 days, because you cannot block 8-hour meeting. You need to have at least 1 or 2 days to understand the organization culture and all that. Because when I joined the startup, because my first project with the startup, and they were doing a business in India. Okay, they were doing a business in India, and also they're doing a business in UK. So similar to your situation, I had no clue where to begin, and it was my first project. But I figured out by breaking it down, I figured out by breaking it down to the small manageable steps. And what I did exactly is how, you can do the same thing, what I did. So first step is understand the business. And to understand the business, you need to talk to the key people. Definitely CEO does not have a time for you to understand. So mostly in the CISO projects, you need to speak to CTO or CIO or the information security lead. So my recommendation is that speak to the as high person in the company who have an understanding of business and technical parameters and all that. So in my case, I set up the casual chat with CEO, product manager, and the tech lead, and I ask very simple question. The first is that what are main products or services? Second is who are customers, who are our customers, because that give you visibility about how you need to operate. And third, what kind of a data do we collect? We don't need to have a fancy 10 questionnaires, what you see in LinkedIn and all that. No, it's not required. I think 3 things will answer all your question. What are the main products and services? Second is who are our customers? And third is that what kind of a data we collect, because in the information security and in the data privacy, the most important thing is that data minimization, because more data you collect, more accountability comes to you. Another important thing which is missing here is where is the data stored? Are we going to store data in the server, cloud, all those things? Is it clear? So in my case, CEO explained we had a payment app for the small business, and the tech lead told me that stored data in the AWS in the Ireland. So glad, because CEO was from a technical background and Indian team, I got access, so I got a better informations. And I reviewed some of the documents also. I dug into whatever I could find, like company website, product vouchers. For example, our website had how it works page, so it shows us journey, which helped me to understand the data flow and everything. Is it clear? Second thing is that I also did the tour of the company. Okay, my first project was a remote, so I have to travel for 1 day. So I trying to observe the process also. I spent a day actually with the development team to see how the app works in the real time. I watched test transactions. I saw how the customer data moved from app to the backend, and this was a gold for understanding the business. And I recommend you to just don't trust the documents, because in information security, we simply say writing. It does not mean it happens. Go look and verify. So review the documents. I will show you one use case which I prepared. Okay, and then we have observed the process, and I start taking a notes. I noted down everything I learned, like payment app, collecting the name, bank details, then store in the AWS. And this took about a week, but it gave me a solid foundation. So for you, I will definitely say start scheduling with the meeting with the as high as person possible, so that you will get the visibility in everything. Okay, so let me show you one sample document that I prepare, which is called as a business requirement document. Okay, so you get a visibility. So this is the sample document. You cannot say sample, but I have taken some permission from the customer and all that, and I prepare my own version of document. So normally what happen in some companies, you will get this BRD document, okay, or sometime you need to prepare on, okay. So in this case, you can see, actually I capture everything on this, you can see, because when you start any project, you will ask for some questions. What is the revenue it generating? What kind of a services you have and all that. And based on that, we can also prepare our own version. So here you can see, I have added my name, which is called Aspirant Technology. They have a dual market, India and EU, and they are the payment startup. So initial baseline compiled from finance, legal, and product input, because it was me who prepared that. And the current was the guy in that company who approved that, because in most of the cases, business requirement approved by the CFO or GC head. So snapshot, I got to know that core revenue they have is mobile UPI, card payments in the 2025, and the expansion drivers is they want to increase the EU subscription analytics. And we are very concerned about, because we're doing a business in Europe, so we are concerned about 4% of turnover breach, and DPDPA India 250 CR. So this is basically give me the perspective what exactly they're doing a business. They have a UPI card payment, and they want, and their core revenue is coming from there, and they have a plan to expand the same UPI concept in Europe. But as we're doing a business in Europe and as we're doing a business in India, we also need to check the compliance and penalties and everything. So that is something is a concern we have. So now what happened is, we need to understand the business overview. Okay. So aspirants earn interchange subscription fees by processing real-time mobile payment for merchant and providing analytic dashboard. The revenue split in for weight 25 is 71% India payment gateway, 22% Indian analytics, and 7% is EU pilot subscription. So right now I understood they have a 3 business. One is called Indian mobile payment, then 22% is Indian analytics, and third is basically called as a EU pilot subscriptions, which is their trial phase. So for me, more critical is right now is because major revenue they're getting from the Indian mobile payment and revenue. So for me, that is basically the first priority. So they said the revenue is mobile payment, they're getting this much amount, EU analytics SaaS generating 2160, and this is basically forecasting they have, okay, and EU analytics SaaS is basically this. Then they talk about the end. So I collected the process flow diagram, which give me this visibility, and this is information you get from the technical engineering team. And I also review the customer contractual requirement, where they have given the master service agreement of API uptime, is because they're giving their APIs to the other bank and all that, and they're maintaining uptime of 19.95%. This is basically availability, and if there is any kind of down we have, so penalty will be the 5 lakhs. Then we have EU fines also, and merchant agreement addendum. Then I try to understand the legal regulatory. Okay. So legal regulatory is in India, they're doing a business. So DPDP is there. In India, we have one more guideline for certain. And as we're doing a payment sector, so RBI and GDPR articles are there. And we have an inter-border data transfer. So we need to look for the SEC. As I spoke earlier in detail with the management and all that, we understood that, okay, in 26, they're planning to introduce device binding, AI pricing engine, and mobile pay. So that is a future project they have. And the key business metrics they tie to security, they want to update the KPIs. They want to increase the turnaround time, reduce the fraud loss, and incident MTTR. And from there, I understood this is a security requirement we have. We need to encrypt the data. We need to ensure the data can be processed effectively and all that. This is something you can ignore right now. Okay, so this is the data we get from the customer. Okay, and the first document you have to prepare for your is called as a BRD. Okay, so when you having an interaction, okay, so either you can prepare the questionnaire and collect this information, or during a meeting you can collect this kind of a data. Now next thing is that you need to answer your specific questions. Okay, so one of the question they ask, okay, you prepare this BRD and it's something you learn from the experience, but in our case, when we go to whom we need to speak, and that's a very good question, because it was me also, because what we learn in theory is different from what happened in the company. You need to speak to, so who tells about business and revenue? That's a question. So for that, you need to schedule the meeting with CEOs and senior executives, because they are the one who provide the big pictures. They are not available, then speak to department heads, technical heads, marketing head for data analytics for detail. And if it's not clear, check the financial report or ask the HR who run what. Is it clear? If you ask me, I schedule the meeting with HR first, because from HR I got a visibility about the organization structures, and I was very clear, if this person is not available, I will speak to him. So that kind of visibility I got. Second is that based on that, I identify the business owners. See, as I said, different companies have a different way to work. So example, if you work for Big Four, the business owners are partners. Okay, if you work for the particular startup, or if you work for the product companies, they have a sales owners and all that. Okay, and product owners. So you need to identify the business owners. So you can ask CEO for the key people, or you can basically email everyone if needed. They will guide you. And another important thing you have to check is that any security strategies exist. So for that, you have to check with security team, technical team. If nothing, then you have to start from zero. My recommendation is just pray, okay, if you get some kind of a strategies. Okay, so you get a visibility about the maturity. If they don't have a strategy, it will be a great learning for you. Okay, so how you build your knowledge. So simply saying, speak to this. So speak to what? What is the thing we need to ask? So let's say example, to understand the business model. And this is the hierarchy. First you understand the business model, then you understand the process in the business model, then you understand the associate, legal, regulatory, and then you identify the norms. Okay. So business model like product line, revenue source, target, customer, growth, market, and to whom you need to ask. So you can ask the chief operating officer, head of strategy, investors. You can ask for the deck annual reports, which give the visibility. I will show you the sample. My suggestion is that you can start with the meeting with CFO first, Chief Finance Officer or Financial Controller. Let's say example, I sent an email, please share the latest monthly P&L by product line. So, what you need to write down is, you can just copy paste, 3 biggest revenue lines like payment, mobile payment, UPI. So just drop an email like that. I want to understand the top 3, the business who's generating revenue for us. Okay, so you need to send this kind of an email. Then we also talk about the process and data flow. Then we identify the associate product and process, like what kind of a process they have, like order to cash, supply chain, software delivery, customer supports. That visibility we need to get. Okay, so that's something we get. So in that case, you can speak to process owner, enterprise architect, and workflow. Then you need to arrange a meeting with the, you need to understand the applicable laws, regulations, and all that. That is something is there. And for that, you need to schedule the meeting with general counsel, compliance officers, and also you need to understand what are the industry norms we have. Do we have any kind of a past history about the breach? So, you have to see top breaches in your sector, the common attack vectors, partners. So industry cert, peer, threat intel feeds, these kind of a visibility we get. So my recommendation is that you can also create some kind of a process document like that, which basically give the visibility. One more important thing, when I basically work on the document and all that, I will show you how I prepare my Excel and all that, but at least by categorizing such kind of a thing, you will be very clear about what kind of data you want to gather. So now the question is, get into your business in your head. Okay. Yes, a good CISO is the one who understands the unit of economics. So you need to understand the board packs, see the revenue drivers, expansion plan, risk appetite, wording, because risk appetite is a level of risk organization willing to accept for the project and all that. For me, it took me 2 hours. Then skim through the P&L reports where you get a visibility about money, which is coming from those lines, 80%, whatever. And the source of the P&L report is directly from an email. The CFO sent an email. That mail will be considered as authentic. And make sure it should be latest. By version history, you can check. Sometimes you have to passively observe the calls, what kind of a calls is happening. Okay. So here the customer promise, they're giving, let's say example, one of the project where I was involved in MSSP and all that, they're giving a commitment of mean time to detect is 4 minutes, mean time to respond is 10 minutes and all that. It's just an example. So I have to do shadow 1 sales call, here the customer promise, and the pain point in the real time. So I think half day will take, set beside the sales VP and listen into the support Zoom calls and all that. So, that kind of a visibility get. So let me show you how the report look like. Okay, so this is the sample P&L report we got. So they talk about net revenue. You can see the net revenue is coming around, it is in CR. Okay, so 490s, 400 crores, 920. They had a net revenue total, out of which India was 3930, Europe was 990 euros. So here what happened, if you can see net revenue, give me the visibility about the 80% they're getting a revenue from India, and 20% they're getting a thing from EU. For us, I understood one thing: the EU project is pilot. So what it really mean for security is, if Indian services get outage, it will impact the bulk revenue. So I have to be mentally prepared that my priorities should be mapped more from India. So I need to prioritize the India platform uptime first and design the EU control for the growth. See, this is how you will balance the cost. So you can see they're talking about here mobile UPI cards, business, SaaS applications, other income, cloud data center. If you can see cloud and data center, they're talking about 1020. So here we can see board already spent heavily on the cloud. So security must not break and cost saving. So we have to verify the CIS baseline, misconfiguration scans and all that. We also see they have a scheme and UPI fees. So it means UPI downtime, which is an immediate cost spike. Okay, so we have to ensure the UPI payment APIs and their multi availability zone traffic should be there. Then they're saying banking fees is there, 24/7 customer support, that generating a revenue. So I understood one thing, that okay, if the customer support is down, the brand will get impact and there will be a refund issue. So we need to align our incident response plan with this playbook and all that. We can see here the gross profit is approx, we have 57%. So healthy margin mean room to fund a key control, which is used as a ROI. So you have to demonstrate that your 20 million SOC can be spent to protect this gross profit and all that. So it's very important to introduce the ROI here. Then they're planning to have a AI pricing engines and all that, so AI models likely to ingest new personal behavioral data. So you need to engage early the R&D team and embed the privacy by design. You can see the other costs like compliance and operating income. So you need to see, you're very serious about GDPR and all that. So you need to fast track your SCC, EU residency enforcement and all that. So moral of the story is that you need to first circle the largest revenue stream, like in this case, uptime, fraud controls and all that. Underline all the expansions, what they have. And along with that, you need to calculate the outage cost. You need to calculate the map the factors and everything, which is basically talk about the requirement. So it's very important. You have to see all these aspects to define the thing. So in the comment box, I just want to understand, are you seeing this kind of a content first time? Because when I was searching for something on this P&L reports to be read and all that, there was no video on that. So do let me know in the comment box, so far, how do you find this video? Good, bad, and do you want me to make more content like that? So move ahead. So we're talking about the shadow copies and all that. We did all those assessment reports and everything. So as I said, you need to pin down the financial controllers. You can share the monthly reports. We can have a meeting with the CRE. He can give me the information about the downtime costs and everything. And we can have a meeting with the sales VP from the sales perspective. So if you ask me, these are the documents I should ask initially. Okay, organization chart, business plan, annual reports, product descriptions, customer engagement document, because this is basically give me the business. We send a top-down approach, so it give me the top approach. What is the expectation they have? Then we talk about the IT, which includes the network diagram, asset inventory, IT policies, backup recoveries, and incident response plan. If you want to check the maturity of any company, you can check with the incident response plan. Then we look for the legal compliance document like client contractual agreements, supply vendor contracts. Do they have any privacy policies? Any record of a past breach? And if you're dealing with the regulatory, because it's a non-negotiable, so we have a GDPR, we have a DPDP, we have a IT Act, and we need to check for the relevant industry specific requirement. Now, what to prepare? Question is, what to prepare before a strategy? These documents will give you clarity, because until unless you don't know about all these things, there is no point of going for the strategy. So it's very important. You need to spend at least 1 week on this particular thing. As I said in my previous P&L report, one thing you need to understand as a CISO, you have to see everything from a security lens. Is it clear? So if you take a same example here, the net revenue was split 80% India to 20%. Is it clear? So if you go back to the the report which I have shown you, this is the one. Okay, you can see the 4920 and 3930 and all that. So what we have to check in this case is, you can see India outage. We have an immediate action is keep the India platform uptime, because that is basically the priority we have. Second is mobile payment. So I was working for the project where they have a mobile payment gateway, and the core money maker, every minute of API downtime costs them 90 lakh in peak hours. Just imagine 90 lakhs in peak hours. So you can convert in US dollars and all that. So I found that, okay, we need a availability zones. They need a WAF. We need a health checks in SLA dashboard. They're hosting everything on the cloud data centers. So we need to look for the CIS benchmark. They have a scheme fees of 680 millions. If fraud spike or UPI halt, it can basically jump, and it has a gross margin. So we need to look for anti-fraud heuristic transaction monitoring. And as they're planning to do new business in the Europe and all, the GDPR compliance is there. Then leadership willing to pay for EU compliance. So we have to look for the DPO tools, retention automations. These things are there. So if you talk about any industry, so anything that earn more than 40% total revenue, they demand high availability and anti-fraud control. In this case, net revenue, which is coming from India, we need to prioritize more availability and confidentiality controls. So now question is, when you got this information high level. Okay, now next what? So once you identify the business and all that, the next thing is you need to identify the legal requirement. So once I understood the business, I need to figure out which law apply to the company. Okay, so that something is very important. So you will be surprised to know that, and don't question my authenticity, but I really made it. So once I understood the business, what I did is I simply did basics. Basics what? I started with the Google. Trust me, team. I actually started with Google. I literally went to Google. That time there was no chat GPT and all that. So I literally went to Google, and I was searching for data protection law in India, data protection law in Europe. So for India, I found they have a Information Technology Act 2000, and then DPDPA 2023 is about to launch. And I'm not saying chat GPT was there, but I was not that much aware about that. So yeah, but I got the visibility that this kind of things are there. And for Europe, it was a GDPR. Since we are in the fintech, I also need to check the RBI guideline for India. So I focus on key laws here, like GDPR is there, which required consent for collecting personal data. That's why I understood. Then I use DPDPA, which is similar to GDPR. The rules on notifying user, allowing data on deletions, and RBI has a mandate for encryption of payment data. So I was not a legal expert. Okay, so I reach out to a lawyer. I reach out to their colleagues who are basically lawyer and all that, who work for startup, and he broke down or she broke down the law in a simpler term. So if you don't have someone, check the government websites like India MEITY or European Commission GDPR page. They have a English plain guide. So, and there was a cross-border data we have, so we are operating in both regions. So I flag the GDPR has a strict rule on transferring data outside the Europe, and DPDP might want Indian data stored locally. So this step took me about 2 weeks, but I shortlisted the law to focus on that. How to prepare company to be comply with GDPR and all that. I already prepared one video on that. Do let me know in the comment box. Shall I make a video on DPDP also? So this is how I basically identify the legal requirement. So now the question is how to interpret security from the business and legal inputs. I understood and all that, right? So when I review the P&L outage costs, I ask myself, okay, see in CISO, you need to ask a lot of questions. Why? Because everything cannot be answered by AI. Okay, you need to be curious. You need to have a lot of questions in your mind. So let's say example, when I was reviewing the PL reports and all that, I'm trying to understand the outage cost. So what is the losses as the most per hour? Okay, when I was reviewing the slides, which is launched by a board and all that, we are trying to understand which new law need to be applied, because they're planning to launch the service in the different countries. Then I reviewed the DPDP. I understood which data class trigger this. Then there's certain in India, if we have a certain guideline, you have to report the breach in 6 hours. So we have to look for the tools which can improve compliance. We also have a client requirement to set up the availability and all that. So every penalty, SLA, revenue number is pulled from the public filing or regulator circular. Okay, and these artifacts are the same one which internal auditor also ask. So here I understood, okay, PNL will cost me, so I need to have a backup with DR, RTO. I need to add the PDPA Singapore because they're planning to, as per the board and slide, I can see by next year, they're planning to proceed with the business in Singapore. DPDPA has a concern, so we have to encrypt and tokenize the PAN data, Aadhaar phone numbers, and 6-hour reporting we have. So we need to have a centralized log aggregations and KPIs, and they want to maintain the uptime maximum availability. So we look for the WAF and auto scale requirement and everything. So these things are basically important for us to understand, but we also need to have an understanding of non-negotiable from a legal line. So for this, you don't need to have a law. Okay, so let's example DPDP, because one of the student has reached out to me, said how to understand legal. Okay, this is something I understand the business, like from the P&L report and high level we got. Now how to understand the legal. So let's say example DPDPA 2023. So where to grab? I download from PDF from METI or Gazette site, and they're talking about single line you copies. There is a clause 5 for breach penalty up to 250 CR. So for me, that is a top priority. Then certain has the directions. They talk about report breach incident 6 hour. RBI has a payment security master directive, which says chapter 3.2, retain the payment logs. GDPR, PDF, they say fine up to 20 million and 4% of global, and we need to have a cyber insurance policy. So as I said, I copied the one clause that matter from me each. Is it clear? And I pasted each line into 2-column Excel. This is basically I created. And based on that, I create one document which is called as an obligation register. I will show you how I created that obligation register, which is a live document which track everything. It is a very good process that if you can able to create one live obligation register, so it is easy for you to track everything. So now what I did, I basically captured everything, my suppliers and regulator data evidence in a one document. So as I said, DPDP, because sometime what happened, the auditor will also ask from where you got this DPDP document. So I have to tell them the exact source, Gazette copy, and this is a location. The line you copy is fine up to 250 CR. Certain, what is the clause? RBI, SEBI, biggest customer master service agreement 5.5, cyber insurance policy, page number 7, GDPR, consult text. So, whatever the key pointers we have, I have created. If something is missing here, I also look for the source materials, like the major people from where we get all the data information is finance, because they give me the P&L report, outage cost. Legal team will give me the GDPR, RBI cert report. Sales team will give me the information about MSAs, and product team will give me the information about architecture, and ops team will give me the information about the backup. So this is how I basically get the visibility. Now we need to understand how to convert business plus legal into the security, because once you understand all these things, now it's a time you need to convert the business and legal into the security requirement. That's something we have to look for. Okay, so this data I have taken from a business requirement document, which I already shown you, right? So this is a business requirement document, and it already given the clarity that, okay, some of the processes they have, that mobile payment, Indian analytics SaaS, and EU analytics SaaS. So I can see 80% revenue is coming from the India. So one of the major thing they have is UPI payment API. After understanding a business process, I understood based on a business owner and all that, if the payment API is down, it will cost 12 crore per hour outage, plus contractual penalty 5 lakh per minute beyond 30 minutes as per the master service agreement of the clause 5.4. So I refer the master service agreement row 5, and what I recommend them to have a auto scale web application firewall, and we can have a 4 availability zone deployment, and it is completely based on a cost. I did the ROI here, I did the TCO here, and based on a TCO I identified these are things are required. Second thing I understood, okay, they're collecting the personal account numbers and all that, so they're storing a PAN. And if you fail to protect properly as per DPDPA, 250 crore is a penalty. So I have created an inventory, and I recommend them to implement the AIS and prepare the company to be comply with PCI DSS requirement. We also collecting logs. So RBI license has required 180 days or store outside India. They have a clause under RBI row 3. And so we decided to forward the logs to SIM or S3 bucket, which is a AWS, and to keep for more than 180 days. As we report the breach in 6 hours and all that, we need to create a established process for incident handling process where the certain non-compliance fines are 72 hours, and row insurance, this is the clause I have taken from a register, and I define that okay, 24/7 SOC is required so that we can able to report the things on a timely basis. But the question is now, what is the next step? So after getting all this information, the next step is CISO will build their strategy based on the PL, profit and loss statements. So for me, the priority one is I need to show them how the 90 lakh per hour outage cost justify the DR upgrade. So I will sit with the CISO and DevOps and build one strategy. The priority two, another priority is basically we have is finalize the EU SSE, because we are doing a business in Europe and we have a movement of data and all that. So here the DPO is involved and EU development lead will be available. Then priority 3 is basically launch SOC 24/7. And then the priority 4, the kick off the AI model privacy assessment, because next year we are planning to have a AI and overall data encryption, which is my responsibility. By 10th June 2025, I can do that. So these are things need to be considered. So this 90 lakhs and all that, and this $18 million, whatever we have, these are basically unit of economics, okay, that we basically consider. And based on that, we can create 3 working documents. So when we get all this data, we need to create 3 working documents. One is called asset inventory, second is obligation register, and third is basically called as a control gap worksheet. So based on all this requirement, we have to create 3 documents. Asset and data inventory, because for every production system like name, owner, data class, like PI, biometric, region, SLA, we have to document one area. I will show you the sample. Second is we need to document the list of regulatory requirement we need to comply, because we need, and one thing is that what I can do is you can paste the exact clause from the contract and law, you just collect. So you can have one per one row. And third, you can talk about the list of controls you're introducing, which is derived from the requirement in the baseline. So the first document we create is asset inventory. So here we had a asset inventory is mobile API and the owner is C2S Priya. The data class this mobile API is going to handle is email, phone, PAN, and the AWS region we have in Mumbai. And demand is 99.5% because API is critical for me. Second is we have a payment database. The owner is basically DBS Karthik, and he's the one who holding the PAN, Aadhaar, taxations and all that. And RTO we keeping for 5 minutes up to 30 seconds and all that. EU portal, because that is my it's a company's experiment projects. So Mr. Seven is there, EU development team. They're going to hold name and email because of data transfer and all that. We have a AWS zone in EU Central with the 99.95 uptime. Along with that, we have an analytic agent, which is basically handled by Asha, and the zone we have selected is Mumbai, and that's basically best for non-production impact. So this is how we have defined the data assets and inventory document. Second thing is that we need to create an obligation register. Like example, we need to comply with DPDPA. We have a requirement of reasonable safeguard data. If you don't do that, 250 crore penalty is there. We have an internal owner, general counsel, document evidence path is there. You can copy paste the URL. Then GDPR is there, Article 44, which has a requirement of SEC for DPIA. Because whenever you're dealing with the cross-border data between the two different companies, we used to sign a SEC, standard contractual clause, 2 different company. And the same company we have is BCR, binding corporate rule. And we define the things, DPO is ensure that. Then as per certain guidance, report the breach in 6 hours. Maximum penalty is regulator action. SOC is responsible for that because they are the one who reporting the breach. And as per the RBI master directive plan, we look for the 3.2 payment logs, license restrictions is there. So DevOps is basically take care of that. Then we have a customer master service agreement, API uptime, cash penalty. So SRA lead will take care. So we get this evidence path and we document that in one section. So now question is, we will do the risk assessment, because here we identify, high level, like we have a business requirements. So now what if you can say UPI is down? What if PAN data is disclosed? What if we log unable to manage? What if incident is difficult to report? So we do the risk assessment, and the formula for the risk assessment is we need to calculate the concept of likelihood. Risk is basically measured by the likelihood and impact. So question is basically how you set this matrix, because in any risk assessment, creating a likelihood and impact is always a challenge. Likelihood mean what is the probability of happening, and if it happened, what is the impact? And there's a dedicated formula I made on that. Now in this case, first we talking about the likelihood. This two section talking about likelihood. So they say 1 and 5. 1 is basically mean rare. 1 is called as a rare, and 5 is basically called as a almost certain. Okay, so question is what the number mean. So any event you expect maybe once in 20 year, I'm just taking example, once in 20 year, the likelihood is basically we can give 1. If something that happened more time, then it won't be in a year. Okay, so that is basically the value we give is likelihood is basically 5. So question is from where you got this percentage, 5 or 80, whatever. Okay, so this is something you get from your incident logs. Okay, you really need to spend good amount of time here on the incident logs. So as I can see, in my case, there was an incident log shows that only one full platform outage in 6 years, which is equal to 17% per year. It means the board said it is like a rare blue moon event, which must be well below the 5%. I felt right. Okay, and how to decide in your organization? You can count the last 3 to 5 years of a similar incident and set the rare to something, clearly below the baseline. On the other side, when I say likelihood 5, something will happen, something that will happen more times than it won't be in a year. So SOC data basically show, in my case, that credential stuffing happening every week, phishing attacks happening every week. So anything you already flight monthly, like brute force and all that. So let's give the value called as a 5. So that is called as a likelihood. So if a risk sit in a process where you see attack weekly, likelihood is 5. If there's been a one breach in a company history, the likely probability start from 2 to 3 or not 4 to 5. Now second part, we talk about the impact. Impact is another important thing we have. So in the impact, they have a value called value called as a 10 lakhs. Okay, so anything which is less than 10 lakhs. Okay, so we set the threshold is 10 lakhs. So here the CFO is the right person. CFO will calculate the average revenue. Like let's say example, they're getting a revenue of 90 lakh per hour, which is equal to 5-minute blip cost, which is less than 10 lakhs. So financial call that as a noise. So we need to find your hourly revenue. Okay, and 5 minutes of it is a good, which is negligible. 5-minute downtime is okay. Okay, but if the value going beyond the 10 CR, okay, so in a peak season scenario, we might get a 12 crore per hour. Is it clear? Instead of 90 lakh, we switch to 12 crore per hour. So it means you can say 12 crore per hour. And if for 12 hours, if any ransomware hit, it will cost me 144 CR. So we need a top band above the 10 CR. So use a worst critical outage, which is like a 5. So you need to ask your finance, how bad was, your last 1 hour outage? Or you can see a risk that could halt the payment through Diwali or Christmas. Okay, but we also categorize another important thing called as an impact from a legal perspective. So let's take example, if a breach of a EU data would invoke GDPR 220 million, which is a 180 CR, that a risk impact legal equal to 5. Even the business loss is modest. So you have to see all those parameters. That's why the huge statutory fine instantly push impact to 5 here, because certain it's okay. 50 lakhs for reporting is okay. Okay, but impact which is going above the 50 lakhs, like 1 CR, it is a concern. So we have to set the band too. So it comes with your thought process. Is it clear? So my suggestion is, how do you build your own table is start with lowest real fines, then highest real fines, then smallest outage loss, the biggest outage loss. Is it clear? So my suggestion is that the frequency log is basically likelihood band and loss of fine is the impact. Once those conversion feel real to the finance and legal, your risk score stop being subjective and security opinion become a board ready members, because every band tie back to something the company already experienced. So that's why this data is important. So this is how we basically calculate the things. Here you can see one of the asset is payment database. The threat is if it hacked. Likelihood of it happening is basically 2, but impact is basically 5. So we give the score is 10. Here we can see likelihood is basically 3, impact is 5. the value is basically 15. Here the central loss likelihood is basically 2. The impact is basically 5. And there's a DevOps team, and this is Jira ticket which track this risk. Okay, and based on that, we basically prepare the control gap worksheet. Okay, so we said, okay, we need to encrypt PAN Aadhaar data. Data is currently partial. Evidence link is there. EU personal data within a EU is there. It has been done. Central log pipeline for reporting breach. Current status is no, because for me the priority is basically SOC and annual external red team report. So these things are called as a control gap reports that you have to prepare. So summary is that you need to prepare 3 documents. One is called as a asset details. Second is obligation register. And the third is basically called as a control gaps. See, this is how I prepared my particular sheet. I will show you. See, this is how the sheet is there. If you can notice here, so we have a business requirement. We have documented key information you need so that, every time I don't need to prepare something new. Typical question need to be asked. Then for the regulator, okay, you can take a screenshot. This is how I create a regulatory list. And then I have created document list, like which I need to prepare: business data, asset inventory, control gap, risk heat map, evidence folder, and all that. A good CISO is the one who keep it simple. Things keep it simple, so it is easy for him to understand. So my advice for everyone is, if you are a new CISO, theme is basically scope creep. Difficult to calculate. Is it clear? So everyone pills extra. So can you do this and all that? So my session is that freeze your first 90 days, standard days we say, where we talk about asset obligation caps, and park everything else. Second is never do the long meetings. They get drained. And if you're documenting something, create a version copy, because people circulate old Excel copy and argue over the column. So better is basically store each sheet in a single SharePoint and maintain the tracking history the way I've shown you. It is always good to keep the evidence gaps sorted, because auditor will ask to prove it month later. So the moment a control flips, so DS done, make sure you take a screenshot. Don't be legal surprise. Product team should sign the EU customer before the GDPR control on in place. So that something can be done, which can be a good practice that has to be followed. Along with that, analysis paralysis, trying to model every obscure risk before acting. Don't do that. Fix the obvious red gaps first. If you think first is important, do that. 40-page information security policy, no one read that. It is good for the LinkedIn resharing, but in reality, it doesn't do that. There's no point of buying a multiple tool. Prioritize what is a need, and according to that, buy the tool. Speak in a language board can understand. Okay, that's a very important point. Single point of failure is you. So build a security champion network, share your responsibilities, block 1 hour early, daily for reading laws, no meeting just because CISO get burnout. So summary is that rapid risk snapshots you have to create, draft the security strategies, that is very important, and launch the security program. So do let me know how do you find this particular video. And I tried my best because I could not find such kind of a data on YouTube. So I thought, let me bring that kind of a data, which is practically CISO follow in the company. And I'm sure those who are aspiring CISOs, they found this session useful. If yes, please share your feedback, because your feedbacks are very important for me to build better content. And do let me know, shall I continue the CISO series with more realistic approach, with more templates and all that? This is all from my side. Thank you so much for trusting my content. Please note, without you, I'm nothing. So I always available for my gladiators. My end goal is to make sure my gladiators' knowledge will be up to date and they get a position, a CISO in any company. Thank you so much. Good day. Bye.